Hello and welcome to Talking to Introverts on this interesting day, April the 1st. I'm Denise Oliver, and as per usual, my co-host is...
Hello, my name is Sami Blackford.
Hello, good morning. So we've got a few topics to have a discussion and chat around today, and I thought I'd give you a rundown of what they are. So obviously it's April 1st, April Fool's Day. It's Easter weekend, which is quite bizarre. End of March, Easter, I always find is far too soon. The clocks have gone forward, which again feels very bizarre. And we thought we'd bring an update on moon cycles and what the last full moon, brought us into being. And that's Sami's domain, and I always like listening to what Sami finds out about moon cycles. So, April Fool's Day. Have you done any fooling around today, Sami?
I must admit, it kind of just passes me by, April Fool's Day. um, have, having never really having any idea of what date it actually is any day of the week or month, um, it's kind of one of those, I don't really pay attention to it. I can remember some things over the years. So when we were little, I remember my elder brother and I stuffed newspaper in my younger brother's in the toes of his shoes so that he couldn't get them on. That was like the extent of an April Fool's prank in my day.
I
This
have
is
to be
when
honest, it was never something that figured for me. I'm not that sort of person in life. I don't prank people. Like, it doesn't occur to me to do it, and I don't particularly want to be pranked either. Um, so yeah, and I've had a little look to see about the origin of it, and there's no absolute certainty about where it started. So I find it a
oh
bit of a strange one. And I wonder whether it's anything to do with like spring energy, like, really, like the sap's rising, we've got more light, so everyone's more
mm,
joyous. That sort of sensation. And it's just been like hijacked as to be more of a jokey, pranky type of day. So it
mm,
becomes, it's almost like a landmark, isn't it, in the year? It's one of those days that most people know about. And whether you join in with it or not, it stays in your mind that it's April the 1st. Um, yeah, I think there have been some very good historical ones done that you can read about if you Google it. And one of the ones I do remember was to do with Big Ben. Have you heard this one?
I don't think so.
No, it's quite a few years ago now. I'm very old. Um, and it was in the start of the digital age of clocks changing to digital ones, and rather than ringing on alarms, you got beeps and all sorts of stuff like that. And on the radio, they started to beep the different time, like the hour when the news was on and that sort of thing. And then April the 1st, some clever newspaper journalist came up with the idea of pranking the country and saying that Big Ben was going to be changed, and no longer were you going to get the chimes of Big Ben and the bells. It was going to be a beep instead, and that the clock face was going to be changed to a digital one rather than an analog round ticking face one. I thought that was a very clever one, very clever. As you can imagine, the country was in uproar. How
I
dare
remember
you, how dare you change Big Ben?
um, quite some years ago. So I used to listen to Radio City, which is based in Liverpool. I don't know if it's still going, but is or was based in Liverpool up the St. John's Tower. So you know the tall tower with the used to be a restaurant on the top. Um, and I remember one year they did a an April Fool's, and it started off like weeks before April Fool's Day that they were um, advertising, marketing that this event was going to happen, and there was going to be pole dancers abseiling from the room at the top and pole dancing round St. John's Tower, which is essentially a big pole. Um, so yeah, I'm guessing. Obviously, not living in Liverpool, I don't know how it turned out exactly, but I'm guessing all sorts of people turned up to see this, and didn't happen because
A
it was an April
non-event.
Fool's. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure there's
and,
been lots of things like that over the
and there
years.
was one I remember when I was in secondary school in Wrexham. You know the Hollywood sign, the big letters on the side of the mountain.
Yeah.
Somebody put, so if you go past kind of Rose Stuthlin area along the bypass, Wrexham bypass, there's a hill. I think it was a slag heap or something like that, some sort of waste hill. And somebody put giant Wrexham letters on that for an April Fool's.
Oh, I know where you mean, where there's the Starbucks.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
opposite the Starbucks,
I know.
that
Yeah,
hill.
that's hilarious. That's
Did
quite
they?
a premonition, isn't it? When you think Ryan Reynolds is now with Wrexham
Yeah.
Football Club. Are we going to end up with a Hollywood type studio in Wrexham? Who knows?
I don't think that hill has got quite the same presence as the Hollywood Hills. I've never been to the Hollywood Hills, but I would imagine the Wrexham version is somewhat smaller.
That's all right. If we can do small, small can be beautiful. I think that's very funny. I do remember one where in the local news, something to do with Chester being amalgamated into Wales and becoming the new capital of Wales.
Ooh, ooh.
That I can only
Bet that didn't
vaguely
go
remember
well.
that
That
one. I remember thinking that was funny. And then
Bet that didn't go down well with either country.
no, yeah, you can imagine, can't you? I think Chester likes to think of itself as being very Cheshire,
Mm,
has been my experience of it. And yeah, it doesn't want to be Welsh. Um, so because everything would change, wouldn't it? All the
it's all
schools
right. The
would have
Welsh
to
don't
do
want you
Welsh.
either.
No, that's fine. You stay where you are. We'll stay where we are. Um, so yes, that's I always think around sort of end of March, beginning of April, you just have to be aware that these things show up. And if you
Mm.
haven't clocked that it's April the 1st, just like keep it in your awareness, like there's something not quite gelling about it. I remember one, and again, this was years ago on the telly, and again, what a premonition. How if we went into Europe, that everything that was grown would have to look the same. So all apples would have to be the same size, all bananas would have to be the same length. Whatever the fruit and veg was, everything had to be grown to very specific measurements. And how these people keep their faces straight, I don't, because this was done on the telly. I don't know. But look how uniform all our fruit and veg is now. And it's like,
Yeah.
these people say these things in jest and somehow it happens.
Mm.
It's like, wow, that's just, whoa, crazy.
I
And
do I do think it's funny though, on talking about vegetables in supermarkets, how now supermarkets make a thing of wonky vegetables.
I know, and there's not enough of them in supermarkets. I don't,
No, but they can't just put them in with like the regular vegetables. It has to be a thing. These are the wonky ones.
yeah, like we care. I do think we have become very sanitized in our approach to what we buy food wise.
Mm,
We want everything like just so and very clean and uniform sizes, and nothing grows like that. It just doesn't.
nope.
Bizarre, bizarre. So it's also Easter weekend. Um, didn't plan Easter weekend. It sort of happened far too quickly after Christmas, to my mind. What about you? Because you do Easter, don't you?
Well, we do Easter Mass. So Christmas at Easter is what we do. So as in my family with my brothers and my parents, we don't do Christmas at Christmas because, well, for a couple of reasons. So years ago, 10, 14 years ago, somewhere around that, my mum was very ill and taken into hospital not long before Christmas. And well, I say not long before, maybe a couple of weeks before. And always the last of the late planners when it comes to Christmas. She had done nothing. um, but she had arranged Christmas dinner. So anyway, I was living in London at the time, and we were texting back and forth and stuff. And she was saying, I don't know what to do about Christmas because I haven't got anything ready, and now I'm in hospital, and my dad cannot be trusted in these things. Um, so, so I said, you know what, it's okay. We'll have Christmas dinner because we've got the food, and because I was coming back up for Christmas, and we can do like full Christmas with presents and family and everything at Easter. So we did that, and I kind of stuck. And then when with my partner and my brothers both have wives and families of their own and in-laws and all of that, getting everybody in the same room at Christmas is a bit of a challenge these days. So that's another reason why we do it at Easter. We can pretty much guarantee that on Easter Sunday we can all be in the same room. So yeah, Easter Sunday for me is quite a peoply one. And then at the end of the day, everybody leaves and I go and lie in a darkened room.
So do you do like a traditional dinner?
We used to. We have eaten roast dinner in heat waves before now on Easter Sunday. That was interesting because my parents' house, their cooker is a Rayburn, also does the central heating. So if the cooker's lit, the central heating's on. And we were baking in the house. We had all doors and all windows open. We were there in like shorts and t-shirts. But my dad last year said that he didn't think he was up to cooking full roast dinner for 12 people or however many. So we do more of a buffet lunch now, which, is as nice.
Do you decorate at all?
My mum decorates. She has, she does like a little tree because the presents have to be stored somewhere.
True.
And where do you put them if they're not under a tree? And she has some decorations around. It's kind of like a blend of Christmas and Easter. So it's not all the greenery that you would see at Christmas, like the holly and the ivy and the whatever else. Yeah, it's none of that. It's more kind of, well, whatever's around at the time. So pussy willow trees, sprigs with pussy willow and catkins and daffodils and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's just kind of a spring version of
It's been
what you would
quite
do
the
at
spring
Christmas.
for daffodils, I think. Mine in the garden came up so early. In fact, so many of the bulbs, what didn't come out, which quite surprised me, until much later than I'm used to with the snowdrops. They didn't
Mm.
appear until February, whereas I have been used for several years seeing them in January. And often the daffodils aren't out until like April time in my garden. They've been blooming since the middle of March, full out, there. Send because I get early onset hay fever, making me cough and choke, and sending their pollen into the air for us all to enjoy. And it's just like, oh, do you know that Easter's early this year? What are you doing? Are you having a chat with the moon cycles? What's going on here? And so it is lovely to have this abundance really from the ground that we can bring into the home. It's lovely knowing that it's not been forced in some area of the world
Mm.
for us to buy in bunches in supermarkets.
Yeah, I noticed the same, like as you say, with the snowdrops. The snowdrops are out, and then you blink, and then everything else is out, like the
Yeah.
daffodils and the crocuses, um, and I noticed along the path in the garden. I think I noticed it a few days ago. Um, all the hyacinths are up, which I hadn't even seen the leaves coming up. It's just suddenly the flowers were there.
Yeah. What we haven't had yet in the garden are the pheasants. I always think of Easter and the pheasants. So it is early this year. So maybe that's got something to do with it. And they're still lying low somewhere. But usually Easter's like one of the first. It's like the pheasants are in the garden. The pheasants are in the garden. One of those things. And some years they come and they just pick all the crocus flowers out of the crocuses. It's like, yeah,
Oh,
nice to see you. Thanks for doing that. Um, but yeah, yeah, the crocuses came up. As I say, they were early and they were up before the snowdrops this year, which I found quite fascinating. And we have a massive, it's three bushes that have now become one camellia. And that's usually January is its time to be prolific, but it's really taken its time this year to open up. And, I don't know, is it the rain? We've had a lot of rain. Is it the wind? We've had a lot of wind. Whereas in other gardens, I noticed early on just how prolific their plants were, and ours has really taken its time. So it's quite nice to have a lot of
mm,
pink in the garden as well. As I often think as spring has been very yellow because of all the daffodils. Um,
yeah.
and there's some areas around Chester when you drive around that the grass verges are just full of daffodils, which is lovely to see. It's really gorgeous, very uplifting, especially with there being more light now in the days as well. So yeah, an interesting one. Oh, nature, it's fascinating. And then Easter weekend, do you one of the things that I never did as a child and only came across this with my own children when a neighbour at the time did it, Easter egg hunts in the garden. Do you do any of that?
When we were little, my mum used to do them around the house. I don't think we went out in the garden. Um, and there'd be little clues and all of that. Um, and with having the nibblings now, we have I mean, when we did it, there was like a little chocolate egg each time, but we have a little hunt that we set up in the garden for, Eastmas Day, and but it's all paper eggs, like cut out egg shapes of pretty paper, and then they get a chocolate egg at the end of it. But it's only kind of very half-heartedly done, I have to say, from the adult's point of view. But
Right.
it's not like you see them. You get adverts on social media wherever where like all sorts of National Trust properties do these big, elaborate, like Easter egg hunts and all of that kind of stuff. Which, I mean, I've never been to any one of them. Whether my brothers and their wives take the children to any of them, I don't know. But yeah, it
Yeah.
has become a thing, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd never come across it. I mean, I think about it now, my eldest would have been about 7 or 8, and he'd never done one. I'd never heard of them, didn't know it was a thing. And then we were invited because by this time it was that era in our lives, my life, where if you wanted to get together with adults, you got together with all the kids as well because you were too exhausted by night time, so no one went out. And this friend, this neighbour, said, "Oh, there's an Easter egg hunt." And I was just like, "What the hell are you talking about? What are we doing?" And she just had them running all over the place. They were so excited. I felt like I was the meanest mother on the planet at the time. Like, why do I not know about this? And then I had another friend who really dressed the house for Easter. And again, it's something I'd never done. Easter was more of a religious thing because my husband, being Catholic, he went to church
Mm.
every hour of the day, it felt like. Easter more important to him than Christmas because of all the story, the history behind it. And so Easter had been like, yes, family celebration and all of that, but nothing really that involved the kids. I just laugh now. And then it did become more of the
Mm.
children being involved. A friend who brought in, like you say, the Pussy Willow type stuff, and she'd have this wonderful, elaborate, where she got all the perfect lengths of the damn stuff from. And she'd have these tiny ornamental eggs hanging from it all, and this dress table, and all this beautiful, beautiful Easter stuff that I didn't even know existed. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do that. And I have to say, this year I just haven't felt like it because it just felt like it's come on too soon after Christmas. I do, I it has been done. There will be, there is remnants of a sort of an Easter thing, But I used to do simnel cake. Used to make one of those. Actually, quite like a simnel cake. That's not happening. Barely eat. The thing that I used to love all the time were the little mini eggs. And
Mm,
I tried other people's versions, but their Cadbury's ones were always the ones. But I just don't like sugar in things these days. So
mm,
whilst in the run up watching football, I've had some. It's just like they don't taste of anything. They're just sugar, and it's just like
mm.
I'm not enjoying this. So my treat to myself for Easter was Hotel Chocolat, very dark chocolate, because that's what I like. So like I'm having that. So yeah,
Yeah.
that will take some time to get through. But
Easter's a funny one, isn't it? Because it moves.
yeah,
Like we said, like it's very early this year. Isn't it something like it can be between like the 20th of March and the 25th of April or something? There's quite a range where Easter can fall.
yeah. There's early Easter, middling Easter, and late Easter, and it's all to do with the moon cycles. So, and I used to
Yeah,
call
isn't it something like the first Sunday after the first full moon after the equinox or something like that?
yes, that's it. Yeah. So that's how it gets worked out, which is fascinating. And it's all because there's 13 moon cycles and we only do 12 months. So it's,
Mm.
oof, when will somebody change it to moon cycles, calendars? It would be so much easier for everyone. Um, I know. And then, of course, the clocks went forward as well. It's just
Gosh,
like,
it's all happening this weekend, isn't it?
what a weekend! What a weekend! And the reason that the clocks always go forward on the last Sunday of March. And because of February 29, it's a leap year. And because of that leap day, it shoved March along by a day. So the clocks go forward. So Easter Sunday morning, I guess it is, isn't it? So
Mm.
yeah. So if you haven't put your clocks forward, do it now. Otherwise, you're going to be wondering what the heck's going on. So we always have to
Every
mention it.
every
Well,
year I get caught out.
do you?
Every year. Yeah.
Yeah. I always feel like I'm going to say punch drunk. I've never had jet lag, so I don't know what that's like. But when people talk about jet lag, that's what I experience as my brain's trying to reconcile that. But yesterday we did this and it was this time, but today we're doing this and it's this time. And I'm just like, oh, it spins. Just literally feel like I could fall over. So that's interesting. But we
And
have to mention
there's
it.
always, sorry,
Well,
but there's always like for the first day or two, you're like, yeah, but really it's this time.
I know. And I do feel for animals, and I understand why farmers choose to not change their times so that their animals get the feed at
Mm,
the same time for them rather than
yeah.
what works for us. Um, and I can't imagine what it must have been like in the war when they did double summertime, British summertime. Like, whoa. Yes, obviously there are a lot of people to feed, and we weren't getting much from other countries. And so we had to work extra hard on our own land. Just, oh, I don't know. I guess everyone was going through it, so you'd have got on with it. But
Mm,
yeah, my brain takes a while. I talk nicely to it. Like, it's okay, we can do this. I do that whole thing of, for me, of looking at the clock a lot, just to remind my brain that this is now the time,
mm,
now this time. And I know what you're thinking in my, yeah, talking to my own brain, that it was a different time yesterday. Yes, it was. You are correct. Today and tomorrow and the day after that, it's this time. And we are going to be, well, it feels like eating differently, but it's not. It's still the same food. It's fine. So yes, I have lots of conversations with my wonky brain to try and bring it on board. And yes, I was saying my friend Sarah, she has to have a mention. I was asking her if the clocks change where she is in Boone, over in the South Pacific. And she said, well, it's very strange over there anyway, because she's on an island called Bougainville, and it's very close to Papua New Guinea, but they're far enough apart that they're in different time zones. So
oh.
Yes. So when you make arrangements to meet someone, you have to check whether they're on Papua New Guinea time or they're on Bougainville and Booing time. So she's like, I honestly don't know. But she said, I'll find out on the Sunday, and depending on what time the church bells ring, so I'll know whether anything's changed. It's like, oh my goodness me, can you imagine?
I know.
So,
I was just thinking, like, we have enough trouble when we know what's happening and when and by how many hours things are changing and which way and all of that kind of stuff. But to not have any idea, and you just kind of have to wait to see what the church bells do.
yeah, yeah, I know. It's crazy, isn't it? But yeah. So hello, Sarah, if you're listening. Yes, we're thinking of you all the way over there. And I don't know. I suppose the closest you're coming to an Easter egg is a coconut. She has a lot of coconut water, which she takes from a real coconut. So
I
yeah,
bet that's very different to the cartons of coconut you get in the supermarket.
I bet it is fresh out of the coconut itself. So I hope you're having a good weekend, missus. I hope it's all right for you. All the way over there. What else is there? The clocks have gone forward. Easter weekend, April Fool's Day, still that. What have the moon cycles been like this year so far, Sammy? How would you sum it up?
So, in my personal experience, energy has generally been pretty, as in, I can't be bothered. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to engage. I don't want to go anywhere. I just don't want to play. And I think that's probably been just generally the tail end of winter. And now, moving into spring, yay, sunshine. Um, so, in the big thing, the big news story in the astrology world this year so far is Pluto going into Aquarius, which I think it happened on in January. I don't think he's fully there. I think he retrogrades back into Capricorn at some point in the year, and then later in the year goes back into Aquarius and stays there then for like 20 years or something. So, so what? So Pluto is the planet of upheaval. He's the death and rebirth, all of that kind of stuff. I always feel like if Pluto's involved in something, it's like, if you have a table all nicely set out with crockery and everything, and you just fling up the tablecloth and just wait to see how things land. It's kind of that effect, I always think, with Pluto. So in Aquarius, Aquarius is about innovation, freedom, society, thinking outside the box, but very much about the future. So if Pluto is involved in bringing his energy to all of that, it'll be interesting to see what happens on the world stage this year, is all I can say.
So it could feel quite dramatic.
Mm. And I kind of get it could be a lot of breaking down traditional systems and rebuilding in a more what's the word, suitable design for now. I mean, like we saw, and I don't know what the astrology was doing with this, but one example is like over recent years, like the whole gender debate that's been going on, and it's not just male and female. There's whatever else, and I say whatever else as in I'm not an expert on this, so I don't want to say things that are not correct. But that's an example of the breaking down of traditional systems and society recreating them in a way that works for us now. So yeah, who knows what's
I
going to
just
happen?
feel like there's times when there's stuff that's coming into focus, and then suddenly there's the mushroom effect, and
Mm,
it's like it's always been here. Like everyone's talking about it, and yet it's taken such a slow boil. So it really does need a certain energy for it to expand. So it's interesting what you're saying. And yeah, some issues do create a lot of drama, don't they? There's a lot
mm,
of resistance to things like that.
yeah.
Um,
So the last time Pluto had a major goings on in astrology was the beginning January, I think it was, of 2020. And we all know what happened in 2020. The world pretty much shut down.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that at that time, I can't remember the specifics of it, but it was something to do with Saturn. I think Pluto had a conjunction with Saturn and another planet, Neptune, possibly. I can't remember. But Saturn is all about work, and again, like the traditional uh, rules, I suppose, is a way of putting it when it comes to like work and all of that kind of stuff. And what happened? We couldn't go to work for
Yeah.
months. Well, for a couple of years, really.
Yeah.
And then a lot of companies changed their structure to allow more of the flexible working from home, all of that. So yeah, changes do happen.
Fascinating. Something I noticed this year with the moon cycles is that I've actually, something's energetically shifted. It used to be that the new moon was the moon that I was very aware of, and that my energy would be much lower. My thinking would be very fuzzy, even to the point that I wondered if I wasn't very well, things like that. Now I notice it more on a full moon. And it's like I can feel my energy dipping as we're like 5 days away from the full moon. Now, I always see the full moon as being a much more energetic moon. That's the time when I want to socialize more, but it's inverted.
Mm.
I feel, or I have done most of this year, I felt more energized around a new moon. I've been more creative around a new moon, and the full moon's had me going, what the heck? What? Can't be bothered getting out of bed today. I do get
Mm.
out of bed, but it's that whole sense of my energy feeling much lower. I mean, do you have any comments on that in case that resonates with anybody who's listening?
A couple of things that come to mind. So it could be where the moon is placed, like as in which astrological sign it's in. So say a new moon is in Leo or Aries or something like that, it could be more energetic because of the characteristics of those signs. They are generally more energetic signs. And for example, if a full moon is in, let's say, a Libra, no offense to any Libra out there, but it's a much softer energy. So it could be that, you know, even though it's a full moon, it's influenced by a much softer astrological energy. So it could be that. Also, I know I've had in the past full moons that are so intense that it just completely wipes me out. Like I don't know what to do with the energy. My body doesn't know what to do with the energy that's going on, and I am exhausted. And it could also be that.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting tracking. If you've never tracked a moon cycle, dear listener, then it's something that Sami and I often recommend at our networking groups because it can help, especially women, to understand why their mood's changed. If you're a woman in business, it can help you to sort your diary out so that you don't have massive meetings on the in the moon at the phase of the moon cycle that just doesn't work for you. And it's only by tracking it that you see the patterns.
Mm,
Because I used to think that once I'd gone through the menopause, I didn't need to do that, but I do. Because definitely the moon cycle still has an effect on me. Why wouldn't it? We're all part of nature. And it's that
yeah.
not being superior to nature. It's just like going, okay, let's work with it. And the garden works with it, the animals work with it. So
The oceans work with it.
the oceans, yeah, absolutely do, don't they? Yeah, cool. Is there anything else on this Easter weekend that we is a burning topic at all? There's a lot going on.
I know.
It's just like, oh, I think I need to lie down in a dark room myself now.
And it's kind of like, do we need anything else to happen this weekend? We've got it all going on.
Mm, there's a lot going on, isn't there? So Are we done?
I think we might be done. It'd be interesting to hear from our dear listeners what Easter weekend is for you. So
Mm.
Denise has done nothing or very little.
Very little.
I've had house full of people. What's your Easter look like?
It has been a strange one. The hour, the earliness of Easter, April Fool's Day. Oof. Yes. Oof. That's all I can say for Easter. It's been a bit of a oof Easter. So whatever you're doing, wherever you are, I hope you're still enjoying the bank holiday, and we look forward to being with you in a couple of weeks' time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.